Today we shall discuss the macerals of coal. We had already seen the physical description of the coal and what are the different coal types on the basis of layers and bands, the dull band, the bright band, etc., the vitrine, durane, clarine, and fusane. Today we shall be seeing the microscopic constituents of the coal, and most important of these, they are the macerals. Macerals can be compared to the minerals of rocks, minerals in rock thin sections under the microscope. Similarly, are the macerals. So let us see what these macerals are. They are the organic entities, which means that they are specifically formed from the organic material, which are microscopically identifiable constituents, and they consist various optical properties. The term maceral describes at the same time both the shape and the nature of the microscopically recognizable constants of the coal. So, it is important to understand that the macerals may be identified on the basis of shape as well as the reflectance of the particular type. So they may be distinguished on the basis of reflectance, color, shape, and relief. These are the four important features which are looked after under the microscope to identify certain group of macerals. While naming the macerals, all the macerals, they are named using the suffix inite. So you have to add this word inite at the end to name a particular macer. Say, for example, if it is the vitrinite, so it is inite word is added in the uh, uh, in this maceral name. In general, all the macers of one particular group are similar in their origin, mode of conservation, color, and reflectance, but differ in their morphology at maceral and submaceral level. It means that when the macerals are being formed, so one group of maceral has the similar origin and mode of conservation, color, and reflectance, but with the increase in the pressure and temperature, and there may be certain changes in their morphology at finer levels where they may be grouped again as maceral or submaceral. Macerals, they are normally classified in three groups: the vitrinite, liptinite or exenite, and inertinite. The vitrinites, they are relatively rich in oxygen. Liptinites, they are rich in hydrogen because of their constituents, and inertinite in carbon. So these are dependent on the composition composition of individual maceral. Means what part of the plant they are composed of will decide whether they are rich in oxygen, hydrogen, and carbon. So if we see this diagram, it very nicely explains that the plant parts and their residues under the process of peatification form the peat, and then coalification and metamorphism they form coal. So if you see over here, the root, bark, stem, and other plant tissues, they uh, they give rise to the vitrinite group of macerals. So you can see over here that the cell walls of plant tissues and humus, they get preserved as vitrinite in the coal, while the spores and leaf cuticles, the pollens, they are all constituents of the lignite group of macerals, while the fungal material and then the burnt wood, charcoal from fire, they give rise to the inertinite. And this is the reason that the vitrinites, they are rich in oxygen. Liptinites, because they are formed from the spores and leaf cuticles, they are rich in hydrogen, while inertinites, they are burnt wood, so they are rich in the carbon. Now, if we consider the detailed classification of the three groups of macerals, the vitrinite group of maceral, it consists of the maceral telinite, colotelinite, vitrodetrinite, colodetrinite, corpogelinite, and gelinite. So, if you see over here, a common feature you will see that telinite consists of plant cell walls with visible structures. Collotelinite consists of plant cell walls with jellified and it is structureless. Vitrodetrinite, detritus. So it is the detrital part of the vitrinite. So small particles of plant detritus, which are worn down particles of plant humus, they give rise to vitrodetrinite. Collodetrinite is mottled peat ground mass. Corpogel, these are the infillings, the gels in the cell structure. So they are primary and secondary cell infillings from humic gels. Gelinite, it is amorphous humic matter in crack fillings. The leptinite group of macerate consists of sporinite, which originates from the outer cell walls of pollens and plant spores and pollens. So that is exenite. The exenite uh, not sorry the exine part of the plant spores and pollen that gives rise to the sporinite. The cutinite is originated from the outer coating cuticles of leaf roots, and those of you who have studied botany, they must be knowing about the cuticle layers of leaves, roots and stems. They give rise to cutinite. Suberinite is degraded cell wall of cork in barks and the roots. So the harder part of the plants, which consist of the cell walls in the bark and the root area, if they get if they give rise to the macerals, it will be suberinite. Resinite, these are plant resins. All of us are aware that most of the plant, they consist of resins, fats, waxes. So all these give rise to resinite. Alginite, very easy to understand. It is derived from the algal material. Bitumenite, this is amorphous fluorescent material of either algal or bacterial origin. Exudatinite, so these are secondary crack filling material formed from maturation after oil generation. And fluorinite is also the same thing. So bitumenite, exudatinite and fluorinite, these are the expelled hydrocarbon macels. And then leptodetonite, these are the degraded or fragments of the residues of leptinites. The third major group is the inertinite, which consists of fusinite. So this is carbonized plant cell wall. So when a in a forest fire, when the wood gets burned, the trees get burned and then they get preserved, then it is they lead to the formation of fusinite. Semi-fusinite is partly humified dehydrated plant tissues. Funginite, fungal spore. So alginite was there in the leptinite, and here it is funginite. Funginite is fungal spores or other fungal tissues. Secretinite, possible oxidation product of the resin. So once they are secreted, they may get oxidized, giving rise to secretinite. Macrinite, this is dehydrated small flocculated peat matrix substances. Inertodetrinite, again, these are the tiny carbonized inertinite precursors. And micrinite, this is secondary qualification residue of leptinitic substances. So you have to uh, understand and remember from which part of the plant which type of maceral group is formed, and this is a very common question asked in the GSI examination. Now this is the detailed classification of the maceral groups, wherein the ICCP, International Commission for Coal Petrology, Coal and Organic Petrology, they gave the detailed classification of the three maceral groups in 1971 and 75. So veterinary group was at the maceral level, it was classified into three: telinite, cholinite, and vitrodetrinite. And at the submaceral level, telinite was classified as telinite 1 and 2, cholinite as telocholinite, geliocholinite, desmocholinite, and corpocholinite. While the leptinite group of macerals, it has sporinite, which was further classified into tenui sporinite, crassy sporinite, microsporinite, and macrosporinite. And other than sporinite, the other maceral groups of exenites, they are cutinite, resinite, alginite, suberinite, leptodetrinite, fluorinite, bitumenite, and exudatinite. While the inertinite group consists of micrinite, macrinite, semifusinite. The main maceral of inertinite is the fusinite, which is of two types, pyrofusinite and degradofusinite. And the last two are the sclerotinite and inertodetrinite. We will have a look at these different types of macers in detail. The first group is the vitrinite group. The vitrinite group, it is derived from the woody part woody part of the plant or trees, and thus it consists of cellular structures. consists of cellular structures which are derived from the vegetal material and visible in vitrinite under the microscope. The uh, These are the most important and most frequent maceral groups occurring in bituminous coal. They are composed partially of gelled wood, bark, and roots. They contain less hydrogen than liptinite macerals, while they are rich in organic content and aromatic carbon. And this is due to its origin in the lignocellulose of the woody tissues in the plants. So, in 1994, ICCP gave a new classification of the vitrinite maceral groups. So, if you see the previous table, we had telinite, colinite, vitrodetrinite, while now it became telovitrinite, gelovitrinite, and detrovitrinite. Okay, so this table you should go through, but if you give this classification scheme also, it won't be a problem. Now, telovitrinite is further classified as telinite and colotelinite, gelovitrinite as gelinite and corpogelinite, and detrovitrinite as vitrodetrinite and colodetrinite. Now, the macerals of the vitrinite group, they are characterized by gray to white color and reflectance between leptinite and inertinite groups in the same coal. So, if in a coal you are looking at the three types of macerals, the vitrinite maceral, leptinite, and inertinite of the same coal, you will be finding that the reflectance of vitrinite macerals is higher than leptinite but lower than inertinite macerals. Now, the three selenite, colinite, and vitrodetrinite, the original classification, how are they differentiated? So, telinite consists of cellular structures derived from vegetal material and it consists of cell walls. So, the word telinite has come from tela. Tela means tissue. So, the cell walls which are preserved, they are called as telinite and they originate from trunk, branches, stems and leaves. The colinite, it is derived from the word cola, which means glue, gel. So these are the structureless constituents of vitrinite. You should remember these. These are structureless constituents of vitrinite, and several times the cell structure means if suppose that this is the cell structure of the plant cell which gets preserved and this cell structure is filled with this material. They both show almost similar reflectance. Then the outer outer structure, this cell structure, this cell structure, this will be the telinite, telinite. While the gelatinous substance which is filling in, this will be the colinite. Colinite. Okay, and vitrodetrinite, this is the vitrinite occurring in form of detritus, means fragments, and these fragments may originate from plant or humic peat particle which got degraded at a very early stage, or they may be crushed by pressure. So the original vitrinite material, when breaks down into fragments, it is called as vitrodetrinite. So just in one line, if we say that colinite, since it is gelatinous or gluish glue-like substance, it is homogeneous in appearance and does not have a particular structure. Telinite shows well-preserved cell structures where cell lumens are either filled with colinite or resinite or clay material, and when the colinite or telinite, they occur in particulate form, means less than 10 micron size, they are vitrodetrinite. So the telinite submaceral, it is classified as telinite 1 and telinite 2, where telinite 1 shows well defined cell structure while telinite 2 is highly compressed where cell lumens are reduced to slit appearance. So if you have a structure like this, a well preserved structure, then this structure can be called as telenite 1. But if pressure is applied and the same structure reduces to this kind of a shape, this kind of a shape, so you can see that it becomes a slit like, then it becomes telenite 2 due to the excess overburden compression. Colinite submaceral, now the telenite 1 and telenite 2, they are telinite submacerals, while telocolinite is a colinite submaceral. It is homogeneous in appearance. It is most dominating constituent of bituminous coal and occurs as layers or bands. It forms the ground mass for most of the macerals of inertinite and all the macerals of liptinite groups. So here you may see that in the telocolinite, which is a homogeneous material, you might find floating particles of the liptinite maceral groups as well. So if it is filled in the cell lumen, it becomes the ground mass for the liptinite group of macerals. Liptinite. So you can differentiate between the telocolinite and sporinite or the liptinites on the basis of their reflectance differences. Now, when the concentration of liptinite macerals become appreciably high, that is, in this ground mass, if these black colored or dark colored liptinites, they become very high in their abundance, then what happens is, then these bands, they became very dark. So earlier these bands, they were of telocolinite, but when the concentration of liptinite macerals becomes very high, then the darker telocolinite bands, they are called as desmocolinite. So you have to understand that the telocolinite is a homogeneous band-like layers and it is a submaceral of colinite. So it is homogeneous and does not have any structure, means it becomes the ground mass, and it helps to not helps, but you can identify it by the various liptinite group of masses floating in that ground mass. But at certain times, the population or the abundance of liptinite masses becomes very high, and we are aware that the liptinites have a darker reflectance, so they give dark color to these bands of telocolinite. And once this telocolinite becomes darker due to these liptinite masses, it is called as desmocolinite. The submaceral geocolinite, it is characterized as the structureless colified mass of humic gel, which acquires shape of the cavity in which it occurs as filling material. Now, imagine that this is the cavity of the cell. This is the outer cell wall structure. This is the cavity of the cell, and this cavity is filled in with some jelliferous material. It is gel. It is gel. And under the microscope, you see a hexagonal like structure which takes the shape of the cavity in which it was found. Then this material, which is taking the shape of this cavity, it is called as gelcolinite. And corpucolinite, they occur as oval or rounded bodies in either isolations or self-filling. So this is how these are identified and defined. So if you look at these vitrinite group of masses, now this uh, vitrinite group of these photographs, they are taken from a website which are according to the ICCP 94 classification of vitrinite, which is also called as vitrinite 94. Okay, so don't get confused. So if you see here carefully, if you see here carefully, then you will find, let us say this. I'm sure you are able to see these cell structures. These are called as cell lumens. Similarly, over here, the very fine details of the cell structure they are preserved. This is called as telovitrinite. Telovitrinite. And here in this in these photographs on the right hand side, you can see that these are those structures which have been preserved, but on the left hand side see a structureless homogeneous kind of appearance of this darker color, sorry, grayish color. This is the detrovitrinite. These are the detritus form of the vitrinite. In this third one, you can see this darker structure, the darker color over here, which is consisting of the, of course, the cell structures are not very appreciably visible, but they are present. This is the telovitrinite. The detrovitrinite, you can see this floating ground mass. This is over here, these bands, while in this cavity, the ones which have taken the shape, they are all the gelovitrinite. Okay, so this is how you can identify these macerals under the microscope. Now let us come to the liptinite group of macerals. The liptinite group of macerals, it consists of distinct morphology, and it is uh, it ranges from dark gray to black in color in the low rank, so dark gray to black color. So the liptinite group of masses is divided into two types, the primary liptinites and secondary liptinites. The primary liptinites, they have distinct morphology and they are derived from hydrogen rich constituents of plants. Now, the sporinite, cutinite, resinite, alginite, suberinite, and leptodetrinite, these are all the uh, primary liptinites, while fluorinite, bituminite, and exudatinite, these are all secondary liptinites. They are products of coalification and they are characterized as expelled hydrocarbons, as I have previously mentioned. So, if you look over here, the sporinite, which is the main liptinite group of liptinite maceral, it is classified into tenuis sporinite, crassisporinite, microsporinite and macrosporinite. The word tenuisporinite, once a sporinite or a spore which is consisting of thin walled structure. So it is thin walled. It is called as tenuisporinite. Crassisporinite is thick walled spore. Microsporinite, it is formed from micro or a small spore. We'll see what is microsporinite. And then macrosporinite is from megaspore or macrospore, large spore. This is how they have been named. Then cutinite, as the name suggests, it is formed from cutine, which forms the outer layer of the leaves. Resinite formed from resins, alginite from algal material, and then suberinite, these are the cell structures uh, of the bark or the roots, and then leptoretinite is the detrital part of leptinites. So if you see over here the sporinite constituted of exines of pollens and spores. Exines, so those of you who have studied about the structure of pollen grains, you will see that these pollens, they have a strong sturdy structure on the outside which protects the internal layer. This is called as exine, while the internal layer is called as intine. Exine and intine. So this exine, it gets preserved to form the sporinite. It occurs as lens shaped bodies in section perpendicular to the bedding. So in all these photographs, the first four, all structures which you are seeing, the darker ones, they are all the sporinites. I'll just show you. So this is a sporinite. This dark color, this structure, these bands, they are all the spores which are compressed. Now, if you see over here, you can see that they are not what they are not structureless, rather they are showing their mm, symmetry, the bilateral symmetry in over here. And once they get compressed, you can see that these are not simply without structure. This is a megaspore. You can see over the, this is under the incident light and this is under the UV fluorescence. You can see over here that this structure, the trilate mark, the trilate mark, which is a typical of the spores and pollens, it is preserved in this case. So all these four photographs which you are seeing over here, this trilate mark and all the omega spore, this is the sporinite. Next one is the cutinite. Cutinite, as I had mentioned, that these are formed from cutine. They are long thread-like structure with one end serrated or granulated. So in the first figure, you can see over here that this is a long thread-like structure, and then this one end, it looks like the tooth of a saw, serrated or granulated end. The same in the UV fluorescence. And then see the uh, last two photographs. These are the photo, photographs of cutinite. You can see the distinctive feature. The distinctive feature of cutinite, it is its thread-like appearance. Thread-like appearance is very important along with its reflectance. Thread-like appearance, it is a characteristic feature of the cutinite. So all these are the cutinite bands. Now in the coals with volatile matter less than 18%, sporinite and cutinite, they acquire the color and reflectance of the ground moss, which is vitrinite, and it is hardly distinguishable. Next is the resinite. So as the name suggests, it is formed from resin and commonly occurs as cell fillings, and circular, oval or rod shaped isolated bodies. The color is always darker than vitrinite in the same. Okay. Now, in the first photograph, which you are seeing, it shows the cell structure. The cell structure, it is vitrin, it is, telenite. But the fluoresce, the yellowish colored infilling, this is resinite. Okay, so these are the cell infilling. So in the first photograph, you can see that the cell structures, which are the vitrinite group of macerals, they are filled in by the yellowish color infillings, which are the resinite. Second one is the typical uh, oval shape resinite. The third one is this is also resinite. So all this is resinite. This is resinite. You can see that it does not have a structure of its own. It is a self-filling, and then overall it is oval or rod shaped. And then this is also resinite. This resinite is an isolated resinite, and you can see it is crushed, it is broken. Okay. In this case, it's a very rare photograph of two resinites which are crossing each other, cutting each other. Resinite. And it seems that since the horizontal resinite, it is cutting across the vertical one, so this was formed later, or it came later than the vertical resinite structure. Next is the alginite. These are very rare in bituminous coals and they form a dominant part of the saprophytic coal, especially the boghead coals. They are not found in the normal humic coals. They have a higher hydrogen content and which gives it dark appearance. So the alginite, they have very high hydrogen content, and that is why they appear very dark under the microscope in oil immersion microscopy. So as the name suggests, they are made up of algal material. The next one is the suberinite. The suberinite, it is compressed laminar mass with cell walls ranging in thickness from 550 to 500 microns and color varies between gray and. So in this case, see, this is the suberinite structure. You can see the uh, cell walls, they are compressed as laminar masses, lamina. like a layer. So this is the suberinite. Suberinite. Next is the leptodendronite. So the leptodendronite, it includes the detritus of macerals such as sporinite, glutinite, resinite, alginite, and suberin. Means the detrital part of those macerals. They are broken and isolated bodies, and these are aggregates of these masses which show black color and appear as clay minerals in white incident light. So in this diagram, you can see photograph, you can see oval resinite structure which is isolated, while the smaller particulate broken fragments, they are the leptodendrinites. So all these are the primary leptinites. The secondary leptinite masses, they are products of chemical decomposition of structured leptinite masses, and they are generated during the course of coalification beyond the subbituminous coal rank. So bituminite, fluorinite, exudatinite, they are the examples of secondary leptinites, and they occur mostly as cell cavities, cleats, and fissures due to generation as the fluid material. The next group is the inertinite group of macerals. They are considered inert. That is why the name inert, because they do not react to temperature during the entire course of qualification. Then, of course, there are some exceptions. The macrinite and macrinite, it has been found out that they react to very smaller degrees. As a rule, you should remember as a rule, the peat and lignite, they consist of much less fusinite than the hard coals. You should remember this. And the inertinite group of macerals, they are richest in carbon content. Carbon content of all constituents of. They are very particularly common in the bituminous coal or the hard coals. The inertinites, they have been further classified as micrinite, macrinite, semi-fusinite, fusinite, sclerotinite, and inertodentinite, of which fusinite is the most important maceral of the inertinite group of macerals, which is further subdivided into pyrofusinite and degradofusinite. How to identify? Remember that the inertinite group of masses will show the highest reflectance. They are normally yellowish white to whitish in color, and they have exceptionally high reflectance. They show yellowish, the fusinite, it shows yellowish white to white color and very high relief as well in the incident white light, very high reflectance irrespective of the rank of coal, whether it is the bituminous, semi-anthracite, anthracite. If you are finding the inertinite group of macerals, they will be having very high reflectance, well preserved cell structure of the wood or the sclerenchyma. So in the photographs on the right hand side, you can see how beautifully these structures are preserved. These are the cell structures, and see their color, it is yellowish white in the incident light, and the relief is also, relief means how clearly they are visible. The two submacerals, they are pyrofusinite and degradofusinite. So pyrofusinite, it shows yellowish white color and very high relief with distinct cellular structure, while degradofusinite is also whitish in color with slight lower reflectance than pyrofusinite. But the important point over here is that its cell structure is less preserved than the pyrofusinite. So how to differentiate between pyrofusinite and degradofusinite? Of course, the color and reflectance may not give you the exact picture, but the cell structure preservation is important. So pyrofusinite has distinct cellular structure, while the degradofusinite, it has less preserved cell structure. I hope you are getting it. Next is the semi-fusinite. So the semi-fusinite, it has optical properties such as color, relief, and reflectance lying between vitrinite and fusinite in the same coal. So it is higher than vitrinite and lower than fusinite. It has fewer woody cell structures. Now it is considered genetically as a stage between vitrinite and fusinite. So if you see over here in this diagram, the light, the bright colored, that is yellowish, these are all fusinite, while the one which is dull, slightly dull, it is the semi-fusinite. Okay. Next is the micrinite. Now, what happens is that once the uh, uh, fusinite, once the inertinite content, they become fine particulate material. They are whitish to pale gray, and the reflectance is always higher than the vitrinite in the same coal. So in this picture, in this diagram over here, the photograph, you can see these preserved cell structures. They are all vitrinite. And this particulate material over here is micrinite, and it is very clearly seen that the reflectance of micrinite is higher than that of the vitrinite. Macrinite, it is a non-granular ground mass and amorphous in nature. So in the right hand side photograph, you can see two oval bodies which are isolated and they do not have a structure of their own. They are amorphous. They are called as macrinite. So it has a reflectance between the vitrinite and fusinite in the same core. So to summarize, you can go through this table, and you have to understand that the macerals, they are important parts of these coals, and they are formed at various stages from various parts of the plants. Now, these macerals, they normally do not occur as isolated bodies or in isolation. Rather, they occur in associations. Okay, and those associations of the different maceral groups, they once they occur together, they are called as the microlithotypes. So we will have a look on the types of microlithotypes and how are they formed and their associations in the next class. Okay, thank you.